Let me get in the former Defense Minister of Maldives, Maria Didi. Now, we have interviewed you very recently about the unfortunate developments that really happened. But in that context, really, we had President's visit to China. We have had some significant statements coming in from him. But there's also the Maldives economy that is suffering immensely, especially in the recent weeks. But traditionally, we've had very good ties, historic cultural ties between India and Maldives. At the same time, we've had a robust defense cooperation. There has been a lot of aid that has been sent to Maldives as well. In this new reality, a new government in power, do you see India and Maldives coming together like before again? Do you think there will be course correction diplomatically and politically that will be done by Maldives? Especially because tourism is one of the biggest sectors out there. And at the same time, the big elephant in the room is China. At a time when the Chinese spy ship through Sri Lanka has moved towards Maldives, where do you see this equation, really? Because China is pretty far from Maldives, and as always known in the last many years, India has been the 911 call for Maldives all the time, and India has displayed brotherhood always. How do you see the relations up ahead?
Interesting question. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's nice to be back in incredible India, a place where I was first introduced to unity in diversity. I did my schooling here, and where I had the first taste for democracy. Now, the question you ask is very interesting, because traditionally in Maldives, we had our defense policy based on foreign policy. And the policy has always been that, we don't encourage aggression. We don't encourage anger. Our first line of defense is diplomacy and dialogue. The second line of defense is also diplomacy and dialogue. And as third and last final thing, we only work as a defense force, the Maldivian defense force. Now, although the present government, which came in very recently, have made very different remarks and acted very different from how we have traditionally been. I mean, any Maldivian government that gets elected, their first point of call is a foreign visit is to New Delhi to visit the Delhi government. But this government has acted different. Now, what is happening is the Indian Ocean has become a hotspot for strategic rivalry. And Maldives, everybody knows Maldives to be this very super holiday destination, famous for its like Louis Vuitton of resorts. But the changing strategic environment and strategic rivalry, and also Maldives having through or near its archipelago sea lanes of communication, which makes up about 1/3 of the global commerce. There has been increasing rivalry, and that is affecting the Maldives domestic politics as well. So we see a shift, but during our administration, we have always had the think that diplomacy, dialogue, keeping good relations with neighbors is what works. I mean, in an era where you all have said, this is not an era of war. This is an era of, and where the topic today is where India can be a global peacemaker, its role. The thing is, we do not want our territory to be a place for proxy wars or anything like that. There was this war in Europe, and it has affected our tourism industry. Ukraine was amongst the 10 top arrivals in Maldives pre-war. Now, we do not have any tourists coming from Ukraine, and that has a significant impact on Maldives. Even otherwise, when there's a war in Europe, certain uncertainties that it creates has impact on Maldives too. So we cannot think of any country that will not be affected, because we are talking about Maldives, a smaller nation because it's a group of islands. But we are still talking about an impact any war anywhere creates on our economies as well. So for us to get into this rivalry and try to take sides is not how we want it to be. As you said, we've always had good ties with India. India has been our first responder, and I believe, will be as well, because it is natural. Look at if you look at our threats, security threats as well, it's all transnational. Climate change, which is an existential threat to us. If something happens to our country, just like the Asian tsunami, the closest neighbor who will come and who can come to help would be India, because we are just about 700 kilometers from Cochin. And if you look at a major oil spill, because the sea lanes of communication goes through or near Maldives, the 8-degree channel has about 16 million barrels of crude oil passing through it. So if there is a major oil spill, just like what happened in Sri Lanka, India was there to help them. Now, a major oil spill like that can be disastrous for Maldives, because we rely on our maritime domain for our livelihood. Let it be the shores where the tourists enjoy their the diving, fishing, whatever you name it. A major oil spill would be disastrous, so we would rely on close neighbors.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, in this era, what you all are saying, when Prime Minister Modi went to Washington, he said he has said it publicly and directly, that this is not an era of war, and diplomacy and dialogue should prevail, and everyone should stop this bloodshed and human suffering. Now, India is part of the United Nations. India is part of the Quad. India is part of SAARC. India is part of the BRICS as well. So they are poised, for being a global peacemaker. And you have publicly said that you do not want to see an era of war. And we Maldivians have always subscribed to peace and stability in the region.
Absolutely. Well, that's the theme of the summit as well. India poised for the next big leap.